Because I'm sexy, that's why. I'm a sexy man. But yes, hello. I am here.
So,
well, okay, I that's probably me, not gonna lie. Speak a second, let me just check. No, you need to speak. Okay, it doesn't seem too bad. Well, I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna be the voice of, I want to say the voice of reason, but I feel like I'm gonna get shot down with people in here. I don't think the Civ vote was controversial. I think the problem is it is the same people, and one of them is in the chat now, so I'm very happy to have this discussion with them, who have come about at the 11th hour, harking on about how the vote is undemocratic, how they are, how they want to lead a different system, how they want to make it perfect. And while their arguments are extremely, extremely valid, I totally agree with your argument. What fucks me off is you've done it at such a late point. The vote has been going on for almost 2 weeks now, like 10 days to 2 weeks. If
well, to be fair,
it feels a lot longer than that.
I think
open for a week.
Anyway, so fair enough, but it's been open for a few days. We were warned about it for a while, and yet people only came out about it.
My position has always been, if someone got a majority from this vote, I saw no reason in protesting it until we got the results and we were able to see that only 20% of people had ranked Norway in any capacity.
Okay, so Ipple, you made, as much as I hated your Beyond Earth viewpoint at the beginning of the fucking session, I thought it was stupid, I thought it was damaging, I thought it was, the way you handled it was just bad. But we've moved past that, so we won't hang on it. What you're saying there is kind of counterintuitive, because when it came to the Beyond Earth vote, you guys were very much adamant from day one that you wanted a runoff vote. When you saw that it was just going to be a straight, when Espresso said it was just going to be a straight up, whoever has the most percentage will get the game, you guys are like, well, hang on a minute, that's not fair. From day one, like immediately,
Okay,
you guys were like, no, hang on, can I finish first? You guys were immediately like, okay, we need to do, no, you can't do this, you need to have a runoff vote, let's have a runoff vote, blah, 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 blah. And I know I was kind of vocal against it, because my point was, well, you voted in Espresso to do this, let him do it. If you didn't like the way he was going to do it, you shouldn't have voted him in. You can argue that people came in during this time period and didn't have the opportunity to vote. I agree with that, fair enough. And this is why I'm so annoyed now, because when we had the issue of what game we're going to pick, we had 3 games, even with Beyond Earth. I'm going to take Beyond Earth as equal here, because I don't want to, there's no point not doing it. So the chances of getting a majority are not extremely high, but are higher, right? Compare that to this vote. There was 43 civilizations, and therefore, when you have, how many votes was it in the end? I know there was a point where it was 89 overall. Okay, so you've got 89 votes for 43 candidates. The chances of getting an overall majority are extremely low. What it should have been was, you guys should have seen what Espresso was going to do. You should have immediately been like, hang on a minute, that's not going to work. We believe that a majority should be an absolute majority, and this is where we want to go with it, rather than being like, yeah, we'll just leave it and see how it goes, and then we'll go with it. The campaigning worked. Norway was campaigned probably more than any other civ. Parties are already a thing, despite the fact that we haven't really started the game, but they formed at the immediate forming of a new mark anyway. And Norway got the most votes. And yes, it was only 30% of the overall vote. But when you have so many candidates, you need to either decide right at the beginning that you're going to go for a different system, or you just do whoever has the most. You do first past the post, which is what we did for this one. And we got Norway. Now, I don't know exactly if you've gone into the details that far, Espresso, and seen, where Norway has come in other ranks. Is it? And I don't want to do this in like AVT or like AV or STV. I don't want to do points voting, but can you see where I'm coming from? Where as much as I really despised you, Ipple, for the initial, all I'm going to say is mean vote Beyond Earth. Not going to lie, and I gave you I gave you a suggestion over and over again for how Beyond Earth can be applied to Democraciv, but not as a new mark. I feel like it should be an extension of an old mark. But then,
that's kicking the can down the road 6 months, 7 months, 8 months.
Yeah,
it's really well and good, and I wanted Beyond Earth now, and I don't regret that position. I don't regret anything I've done during that campaign. But that's bad.
That's something else. But this is why you've established yourself as someone who is
majoritarianism.
Go on. No, go on.
Civ vote. I personally was. I can't speak for anyone else. Because one, I'm unfamiliar with the points vote system. For all I knew, that could produce a majority. And second of all, I was less invested in it. I didn't really care who won, so I wasn't paying as much attention during the debates on the
full ballots determine what the only that then those.
Can I make a couple points? So first, I think that, this is a conversation. While it's a great debate, we should save it.
Well,
we should be working on the Constitution. But
agree.
What I wanted is I say that want to not.
How many people voted for Norway?
I just think,
I don't know. I feel like we had a higher turnout for the first referendum, and you only needed 19 signatures then. So if anything, I feel like the number should be lower than 19.
I think you should just go with what we've got. Because the thing is we need to get to a point now where we need to start making the Constitution. Now, the way I see it with arguably the game vote is kind of important. The Civ vote I don't think is that important. The reason being I don't think the Civ votes are that important at all.
Not important.
Is because
what you think is important, other people might find important.
No, fair enough. Yeah, no, fair enough. But I think on the grand scale of things, compared to picking a game and getting a Constitution and getting the game started, the civilization vote in the middle is not overtly massive because, let's be honest, when a Civ only becomes big in one age or one period, and we can adapt it and change it to how we want kind of throughout, there are a few paths that maybe might shut off to us, But generally, overall, I think it's one of those things that kind of needs to get going. So yeah, I'm very much in favor of it just moving on.
I think we can hold the civ vote while we're doing constitution stuff. And really, I never saw the need for holding the civ vote this early. I really preferred it last Mark when it was after the constitution.
People want to form parties. People want to promote their parties. People want to have fun with the game. That's why people want the fucking civ vote.
No, I mean, last Mark we had no problem at all forming a ton of parties.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Constitution is notoriously dense and notoriously, I don't want to say the word elitist, but generally, once you've played a couple of games of Democraciv, you get into it a lot more than, say, new players do. Mhm. Oh no, you're totally right, and that's why the Civ vote needs to be fast. Move on.
I feel like the problem is vote now, which we did. Referendums we can hold until we ratify the Constitution. Case scenario, we're not writing a Constitution for another week, another 2. Having this list of activities and then nothing following that. Those articles are the biggest, most important articles. It's like, yeah, no, I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying those 2 articles will take multiple meetings each.
I don't know.
We also have to get back to the states article and decide some stuff there too, but let's do judicial.
Of the Supreme Court.
I've also been chatting with Domador, just he and I in chat. Maybe bring over some ideas that he's expressed to me as well.
That could be fun.
Be fun. Like that. That's like, I mean, you could also make a similar thing about if the executive appoints the chief justice, and if by law passed by the executive.
Well, how about we change? Because I like the idea. I want to say this. I like the idea that the legislature have power over the Supreme Court or the judges in general. The reason there is a bit of echo going on here. Angors. There we go. So this is maybe my view. I am much more in the view of we should have more a represented for fuck's sake, someone say the word for me.
Representative.
There you go. Form of government where the idea is the way I see it. This is me. I don't know whether or not we're going to go with this, but I like the executive the way it was in Mark III. I think it needs a little bit of trimming, a little bit of working around to make it work effectively, but I think it worked well generally as a whole. The legislative branch worked okay.
Can you explain what the Mark III executive?
I'll do that just in a second. I'll explain. And then we had a council who were in charge of various positions. Now, the council, I think, is the thing that needs the most work. Yeah, no, I think that's a good way to do it. So you have. See, the way I would like to do it is say make the executive branch perhaps proportional representation. So you have a presidential vote, i.e. you vote for a president, and then you vote for a party for the executive. Therefore, so you have 5 cabinet positions, right? And then let's say Party A wins the presidentship and they win 40% of the cabinet, but then only the Party B wins 6% of the cabinet. Now, the way that works is that Party B gets 3 places in the cabinet. That means the president has got to work with Party B and Party A to get stuff done. And so the president is the one that can make a final decision, can come down on any sort of tiebreaker if that ever happens, i.e. if someone abstains and 2 for, 2 against. The president generally does the thing we did in Mark III, where the president plays the game until we get up to points such as, what do we do in a city? What do we do maybe with culture? Maybe they want to make a military position in the cabinet, a religious position in the cabinet. I think it depends on the presidentship, and I think it might depend on how people want to work. And I think it's an idea I've got in my head, and I think perhaps people can talk about it and discuss about it. But I think, as you say, making something that's dynamic and movable is the best way to go. That's why I had the initial idea of having, the way that the executive for me would be like the House of Lords in the UK, where the legislative could vote people in, and then they'd be part of the executive. They could vote people out. Anyway, that's a bit confusing, and I don't think people are quite ready for that yet. But going back to the judicial and legislative point, which is what we were talking about.
Aren't they confirm anyway, right? It wouldn't be a whole lot different. I have two questions about it. Two questions. First of all, what does it fix from previous marks? Add particularly. Right. So what does having the legislature appoint justices do, as opposed to letting whatever our executive is nominees and then send them for confirmation? What is the difference? What are the pros and cons of them? Is this a necessary change? Is essentially what this comes down to.
I suppose
We
it
feel
depends if you have an
about-
executive
Or are we just tweaking it for the sake of tweaking it?
Can I just ask a question? Do we right? Maybe this is just me, and this is perhaps my issue. Do we want a perfect democracy? Because the reason I ask is, if we have a perfect democracy, everything is going to be la-di-da and everything will be great. What I want is I want a democracy that can, at times, descend into chaos, for lack of a better term. And
It doesn't. It's totally off topic.
no, the reason, no, it's not off topic. No, because the reason why this perhaps yeah. So this is my point. So where what I think you can do here is, if you let the legislative vote for, or have to vote for Supreme Court or judicial branch, don't let anything the judicial branch do be above the legislature. Let them have the final decision. Someone breaks a rule, if it goes to court, let them make the decision. Now, what this does, it does a couple of things. It means that both the legislative and the Supreme Court are on the line if they make a blatantly wrong decision. For example, say we put into law, you have to play 5 turns. I'm the president, I play 4 turns. For example, say we go for the president playing a game. But the party I'm with controls the Supreme Court and the legislature, right? And the Supreme Court turns around and doesn't charge me, despite the fact it's been brought up. They're like, oh, well, this happened and this happened, so we're wavering it. Well, what does that do? Well, what that does to the game is it gives everybody else a really good reason to be like, well, hang on a minute. They are abusing the system. This is a party we shouldn't allow to be in power again, and thus my party suffers for it. So while this is what I think we should allow. We should allow systems in government, and I think with the judicial, I think this is a particularly good reason, a good place that we can do it at a limited level. We should allow systems in the government where parties can exploit it. They can't exploit it to a point where they break the game, but they can exploit it to further their own means. But if people are switched on, I mean, I took a very basic example before, then they can absolutely turn that on their head. One of the things we don't really get in Democraciv is protest ideas. People saying that this happened and this happened. I mean, I didn't play Mark IV. I got sick of it. But one of the major things I've been dealing with Democraciv and even looking at it now is a lot of people know how to play the game, and it kind of ruins that in a sense. So you need to have things outside the game if people are trying to min-max Civ itself to make it interesting. And I think little things like this can do it. That's why I think having a legislative that votes to judicial and votes to justices will create a sense of, I don't want to say fear, because fear is not the right word, but a sense to do the right thing. But you can do the wrong thing if you want to, but you're going to get hounded on it.
Just personally, I think little difference between having an executive take nominees and the legislature confirming them, simply the legislature picking and confirming them. There's really, I mean, it's just the one step of an executive picking those people, and I mean,
That's
if
a
it ain't
pretty big
broke,
difference.
fix it.
That is a pretty big difference because if the
Is it though?
legislature,
Because
if the legislature can just push anyone they want, and it doesn't have to be, say we have a president. In the event that we have one executive, then one party, you have to get that party to support your candidate, and that party is probably only going to send their candidates.
okay, but if the
Versus a
legislature
legislature,
confirms them, can't they just reject whatever nominees the executive sends over and over until they
Right,
get the person they want?
right?
It's
but
functionally the same.
it's not functionally the same because if there's a majority coalition in the legislature that happened after the president was elected, meaning the president belongs to a party outside of that majority coalition, then in a legislature that appoints their own justices, then they can get a candidate through. They can get someone onto the Supreme Court. Whereas
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, they can do that. Why is that a problem?
I don't think it's a problem, and that's why I don't think it should be the executive's job to do it. I'm just saying they're not the same situation.
I don't know. Functionally, they are. Like,
Totally the same. That's what, like, if the legislature
and
controls
just
who
going
goes
off
to court
Mark IV
already.
experience, I don't recall a moment when the legislature ever rejected a nominee, apolitical.
I completely disagree with that. Right. Ultimately, okay, good point. Except in the end, the legislature still the people that go to them, right? So my point is like even if the executive chooses all people in their same party, you're going to have people in the legislature who are put a stop to that if they feel like putting a stop to that, right? Any people from that party, they can just reject nominees until the president gives in, or they'll have roadblock, or maybe they'll pass legislation to try to overcome that. I guess my point is that like we've had this system in since Mark II, right? The executive appoints justices. I don't think we need to change it personally. I think it's a good system. I think it's worked for us.
It
I
hasn't
think there's
produced any problems. I think there could be some. I like the idea of a citizens nomination, like in the chat here, as opposed to an executive nomination.
I'm okay with that. I just don't want it to be. I don't want it to be a system where justices feel like they have to answer to the population.
I think there's a difference between you signing up on the list and the legislature deciding if you're qualified and confirming you or not, and you being voted and elected upon.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much already had that. We've had systems where you'd have a nomination thread that the president.
This would just formalize and streamline it. It would make sure that everyone who signed up gets nominated in some capacity, and then
there should be a system in place that makes it so the formal way to pick.
Before, it was kind of iffy. Sometimes wouldn't.
Executive.
People.
Legislature.
Bull, what did you say?
I said the people, or maybe the legislature, like through like Sun was suggesting, a Reddit post going straight to the legislature for confirmation.
Pretty split. I think the Chief Justice should just be appointed regularly. Like the Chief Justice, or rather, the justices choose from among themselves who would be chief. I think. I don't think there's a reason. I'm cool with leaving it pretty open.
I love interesting things. Procedurally, the more we leave open-ended, the more weird government conflict we'll have down the road. And while some of those are good, we don't want the entire government to just be every single citizen of Democraciv just kind of yelling at each other, because that won't go well. Can I just bring up a little thing I've been looking at since the end of the last mark? So, in the last mark, especially with big coalitions like the Grand Coalition and the whole peace thing and whatever, there were a lot of backdoor party deals, and it was a lot of party leaders would tell their people who to vote for, and the number of people in your party was basically the number of votes you were getting. There wasn't much dynamic voting like we see in a lot of major democracies today. So I'm kind of looking into how should we go about dispersing those votes and stopping it from just being, well, Dinah says there are 20 people in that party, so they're going to get the legislature.
I don't think there's any way we can prevent people from voting on a party line.
Right.
I don't think
Like,
Dino
I don't
was,
really want
was a metric for determining how many people were in the legislature.
it was you could look at least the active members of a party and know pretty much the outcome of the next election.
I don't
There
think
were a
there's
few
any-
that you wouldn't.
I mean, are you suggesting we like give bonuses to certain parties?
I'm not saying we give bonuses to certain parties. I'm saying there must be a way of making it so that it's not just who's in what party, they vote right for that party. Done. Because
Isn't that why they're in the
Well-
party?
yes, and I am fully aware of that. But if you see like a large, if you look at like a larger democracy that isn't 100 people, you'll see people voting outside of their party because of how their beliefs don't quite match up with the people being put forward by the party.
And Germany.
So I'm thinking about how to facilitate that easier and almost promote that, but not quite. And I think the big thing would be not asking parties to give legislative tickets, but asking individual people to declare candidacy under a party.
Executives. We did that with executives last Mark, and what ended
Right.
up happening would be people would still vote for the party nominee.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's kind of expected. But if we,
Mark III.
oh no.
There were some issues with it.
Well, that's what happens when anyone mentions Mark III.
Yeah. I think part of the issue was that a lot of people, it seems that a lot of people identify more with parties than they do with individuals. When especially the people who are just kind of seeing that an election is happening, they look at the party platforms more than they look at what the individual platforms are.
Right, yeah.
I think just on a accessibility level, parties act as a very good
Way of
sort
getting that system to
right.
work. Yeah.
Really opposed to finding some way to go about having more individualism within our elections.
But there's no easy way to do it. Right.
It's really hard, and
Yeah.
also I actually personally am on the other side of the spectrum from you on this. I think that rather than having any sort of individuals, parties are just allocated seats, or independents are allocated a number of seats that they can fill. And if they feel that someone in the legislature isn't showing up or isn't doing their job, they can replace them with another person in their party. So seats are allocated not to people, but to parties for them to fill at their leisure. But
And
that's a completely interesting topic. So
I think that if we start out with that system and we hold with that system, then that's a great idea. But if we start by electing people and then that shifts to electing parties underneath, but I mean it still looks kind of like we're electing people, but like I don't want the Constitution to say we're electing legislators and then get a ballot that says vote for this party, vote for this party, or vote for this party.
sorry, I missed.
If you get where I'm coming from. Well,
Just got redirected to the legislature. Okay. Those are basically just the prime minister will assume the office of president, and if yeah, it's just a different name for the same. I was thinking that the vice president could just become the speaker, in a lot of cases. I think that's a very interesting. It'll make the vice president worth something.
Wait, have we decided whether or not we're doing bicameral yet?
Not
Okay, because that would change my opinion on this.
oh, well, I was exploring some ideas on what a sort of branch of the legislature that's kind of elected based on the states would do. And I think it's possible that we can reserve some special powers for them that are state related. But you know, no, I know we're talking about government systems, like governor systems. No, I just sort of realized that I think the best way to go about deciding how we structure these things is to first determine where we think certain powers should lie related to in-game stuff. How much do we want to give to an executive versus the legislature? What are those powers? Should there be a veto? Why or why not? Uh, else? Who gets control of?
Yeah. It's true.
So
I think general should go back to Mark II system, appointed by the ministry, confirmed by legislature.
I'm just very
I think we should
adamant.
do more things like that. Things where the branches share a power, not just like take one, take A, other one gets B. Yeah. I also think the veto system. The main argument was that it was overused and it was like kind of like wrecking legislator fun. I think instead of just removing it and taking away any check on the legislature, you need to create a culture around it where it's used in more drastic scenarios, not just because you dislike a bill. I would veto a bill for most of my time in a ministry if I felt it was either oversteppy, mostly it's trying to control a specific thing. For example, like build this boat, name it this. When it should be, here's a system for us to order you to build a boat in the next, 2 or 3 things, and we can suggest a name or something. I would much
Well,
prefer
okay.
something like that. I mean, that's getting into that's a tangent.
Can I just say sort of my general philosophy on the balance of power between executive and legislative? And I think you already know this, Wes, and perhaps other people. I just really think where the pace of the game is aligned with how fast the legislature goes, as opposed to a system where the ministry is required to play X amount of turns per week, and the legislature has very little ways of catching up with it. The veto really only exacerbated that. I'm okay with a veto, but I really want a system. I want to see a system where the legislature is able to react to what's happening in the game, and we align the pace of the game with how fast the legislature moves, as opposed to how fast the ministry does.
I think we talked about this the last session, where we basically come to the consensus the legislature should have certain things like tech or culture where the game will stop when there's stuff they haven't voted on. They approve 2 techs, that's how much the ministry is able to play for. And I think that is a pretty good solution to this issue. Yeah. Not
I
like
agree with that
specifically
too.
being.
Okay, I am 100% in favor of that as well. Fine way of going about it. I just think it'll be difficult. I think we're going to have a lot of disagreements on specifically what those milestones are going to be. Have a broader list of milestones.
I think that's really going to be down and should be down to the legislature, though. Just in general, the legislature can pretty much, if we allow them, if we should, they can just be only we get to decide text. So I think it would be smart to give guaranteed powers, just the basic things, not super specific. So,
I agree.
like, I mean, what I mean by that, so like tech, culture, possibly trade, I guess.
So I guess a part of my
What is Mark
sort
II's
of broad
powers, honestly? Sorry to interrupt.
there were it wasn't super specific. Remember exactly.
I would like to
But I
see
think
like. Oh, sorry, go.
I think that we need, and this is my philosophy, you might disagree. I think we should have it so that absence of legislation, there should really be nothing that the executive can do. Play the game how they want it to. I think there really should always be some sort of guiding document legislature produces that explains how the executive should go about doing their next few turns. So I think a lot in that sense, I think that powers should not be for the legislature. The reserved powers should really be for the executive. And we have to think about what are the things that the executive will always have control over, subject to some form of minor regulations. So moving units is the obvious one, right?
Yeah, so then how broad do you want to go with that? Do we say managing cities?
I'm cool with
Because
managing cities.
if the whole guideline thing. I personally think governors are very inefficient during sessions. They don't really bring a lot to the table. However, if we do a system like you've been proposing with states and having representation like that, that could be different. Because they would have more purpose than just one city. Honestly, I'm not that feels kind of idealistic to me. To assume that I definitely wouldn't build the system around the assumption that it's going to be super important every little city.
So what we've got so far, what we can agree on so far, is that the executive should be able to move units, at least military units, right, or exploration units.
Well, I mean, the executive would include the mayor, so they would be able to move units.
Right, and also controlling like cities, city production, population moving around, like what tiles they go on, controlling the workers and the settlers that are produced from those cities, and then what do we feel about sort of an executive being able to control diplomacy and trade deals between international civs?
So I think the issue with any of this is going to be if we say executive can control diplomacy, does that mean the legislature can't do anything with diplomacy? And we've got to be kind of careful with that. And I think the fact Mark IV didn't have any of those issues because it was just so open-ended is one of the big strengths. Because I think we're all in agreement, like the general community even, that the legislature should be able to have, regulation, top-level regulation, so that they can be like, okay, we will say we're enemies of these guys, or you can't just go denouncing everyone willy-nilly. That's
why I like
reasonable. So
that's why I like tacking on. That's why I like tacking on that subject to reasonable regulation under the rule of law to most of the clauses there, right? That describe powers.
Yeah, and then that's also going to give actual work to the Supreme Court. So.
Yeah, exactly. Then the Supreme Court can decide was that a reasonable regulation, and they'll have to decide amongst themselves what sort of system.
Quick thing on checks and balances.
Sir.
I've been thinking shutdown clause, making. Hear me out. If the president doesn't want the legislature to hold a session, and the legislature doesn't have some level of supermajority support for it that session, then they should be able to force stop that session.
I think this
And I want to
system-
make that so that that is
I
a
think-
condemned action that most people won't use because it's
Wait, wait, wait.
frowned upon, but
I think
you can use it in a time of need. And
I think it
it'll
would-
bring weird party relationships. That's kind of what I
think
want
it
to
would
see.
be a lot like more natural and work just as well if we had a thing. If the legislature can't force the president to do a session, if the president, say, contests a tech choice, they can basically cause a shutdown and like refuse to play.
So a legislature caused shutdown?
That would create a similar thing, and then maybe the legislature would have to vote to force them to play, vote to force the vice president to play or whatever.
I like that. I just want a way of parties to be able
However-
to jump in and make the government weird.
I think that would honestly be a more of a bill thing, but the way we would allow that would be to not force the executive to play in the Constitution, which it sounds like
Okay.
they want to do anyways. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really a big thing about controlling it. If you have to go through another person, whoever is streaming the game is going to be running the session. It is that simple. I can tell you from all of Mark 4, Mark 3, and Mark 2, whoever is streaming the game, they're the ones saying, "Okay, guys, we have vote in X city. What do we want to do with this unit?" They're running this system, and if the president isn't streaming, they're not going to be running the system, or it's going to be very annoying too. So I think, while we not everyone has it. That is why it's fine to have the availability of a streamer, but to force it in any sort of way, to force it in any way, or to like require it in the Constitution is ridiculous. You can just say the president can delegate streaming, like we have in the last 4 months.
Yeah. It says so. Let's take a quick look at what it actually. I mean, this is what he posted here. I think we have 2 different, the same thing, but at least under mine, it says in Section 2B, if the chancellor is rendered, or president in this case, is rendered incapable of running or streaming the game, such duty may fall upon the prime minister and or speaker, whatever you want to call them, or other designee instead.
No, it should
Very simple.
It should just be other designee.
Fall upon.
Because this could also just if we have a president system, I would suggest a vice president system, just so you can have vice presidents that keep showing up who actually own the game, because that would be
Suggesting. Oh, we
quite
can't edit.
useful.
I am not. Yeah, but I can't edit it even. Oh, now I can. There we go. Fresh it. Okay. Easy. That's all the time. But then also let's look at the Section 2 with the powers that were given, and I think this is aligning with what we're saying. The president shall be responsible for implementing the law as it pertains to in-game decisions, and shall be responsible for publicly streaming the game when doing so. So that implies
That would mean we can't do the cool shutdown thing because they would be responsible for streaming the game or implementing the law. But it's whatever. It's fine. I wouldn't.
Anyway, that implies that there needs to be.
I wouldn't get beat up then. I really wouldn't. I think it's fine. I think if anything, we can maybe find a different. I'm going through a couple ways in my head where we could find a different way to shut down. I really wouldn't get sold and like. I wouldn't compromise the Constitution for a cool joke. I mean, it's a very cool joke and it could be fun, but I'd rather just have some sort of. No, not sure what you mean. Can you repeat that one more time? Yeah. Honestly, I think that should, if anything, that would be done through legislation. Legislation would say, this is how we vote on the civic. If the president disagrees, they may blah blah blah. If the president vetoes a civic and they're no look, if we allow the president to veto a civic, can I just say we no. Well, it would be a bill that sets up the tech and stuff, and then it would just be motions in the future. What it should be is that in that bill, it says the president may veto this. If the president vetoes the civic and there's no civic available, they can't play. That would be the shutdown scenario.
So,
we should probably say legislators can regulate X things through law. Those X things would be tech, civics, all the blah blah blahs.
well, I mean, the legislature already has this power under the draft that we've given them.
Well, my idea would be the executive can do kind of like in Mark IV. Executive does whatever, but the legislature can regulate all of these to a further extent than just reasonable maintenance. You know what I mean? So, like military, it would be like you regulate it so they can't sit troops on enemy borders to incite a war. But for tech, it would be we fully control. That's just an idea. It's not really fleshed out. So I really think the whole things with civics and techs not being determined game can't play should be implied. If the executive in no way has power to decide a civic or tech, they physically cannot continue a game.
Right. That's the system that we have right now. That we've given. So, right, if you look at the text, you have their chancellors responsible for implementing the law. Right. They're doing what the legislature says as it pertains to in-game decisions, things like civics and techs, and are responsible for streaming the game. They can manage units capable of dealing damage and manage diplomatic relations with foreign civilizations, and we can include that somewhere in the executive that cities are subject. We'll figure out what happens with cities and whatnot later. Give them a veto then they're given this power, right? If we say
Yeah.
the president has a veto, means that this is exactly what it's exactly what you want, Espresso.
Well,
Veto will essentially act as a shutdown, right?
it's really how
He's
you interpret veto. I'm assuming, and this is a pretty fair assumption because this is kind of like how we do things. The legislature would pass a bill that lays out the groundwork for them to do civics and text. And then the groundwork inside of that is like with a 4/5 vote or like with a 50% majority, they decided tech. So that wouldn't really be a bill, and historically you haven't been able to veto things like that. And I don't think that should change, honestly, because that's kind of how like the legislature keeps its power. But it like, you know what I mean?
right. Saying if we give him a veto, allows the chancellor to shut down the game pretty much any time.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying that veto only works on like bills. If there's like legislative using a power other than a bill explicitly given to them by the Constitution or another bill that's already been passed,
So
then the executive can't really veto that.
It would be,
which is why I'm suggesting
the rule of law.
Excuse me?
It would be something other than the rule of law, right? Because technically, I mean, bills and
well, the executive, the president,
not in a bill.
well, the president can veto a bill. I'm saying, let's see, for example, would be only the legislature can declare war. The executive cannot veto declaring war.
Right.
Howdy, y'all.
How's it going?
In Mark IV, we had a bill to do declaring war, where the legislature voted, 50+1 to declare war. The executive was not able to veto that. It would be just like that, but with anything else under the sun.
Okay. So as long as we clarify that war is reserved to the legislature, that cannot be vetoed, is what you're saying.
As long as we I think it would be a lot easier. As long as we clarify, executive can only veto bills. Only bills. That's what it says. That's how it is worded. That's not. Again, that should be implied, not written in text. If the executive doesn't have the power, we should say the legislature has the power to pick civics and text. Or has like the sole power or something like that.
We don't even have to call them bills. We just call it legislation, and we have to define what legislation is.
What do you mean? No, look. Executive or Espresso is Espresso is trying. Espresso by adding this 8C. That is kind of the point. The control they would have over it would be I'm saying the milestone should be implied, is what I'm really trying to say. The milestone is implied when it is that the executive cannot advance the game without taking X action. They cannot themselves do X action without legislative approval, and legislative approval has not been given to X action. So the only option they have is to end the game in the session.
Which is implied under the current wording, which is that they're responsible for implementing the law as it pertains to
it
decision.
is.
Shall
Coffee added another section that says like they cannot play if texts and civs are not picked by the legislature, which is not needed. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, as long as we define broad way of defining legislation such that it includes technology, civics, and anything else we want to include in there. And then we are able to specifically define, things like declaration of war or other things that aren't subject to veto. Then we're good.
Well,
as
nothing
long as we're
except
saying,
bills should be subject to veto, unless it's
right.
something the legislator creates in a bill that explicitly says, like, legislature votes on this, but the executive can veto. If they say that, obviously, that's not even the same veto.
Veto resolutions, for instance, that the legislature produces. Something that's a declaration more than anything.
Yeah,
right?
well, so like so if there's a resolution to declare war, they don't get to veto that. If the legislature in their war bill had said the executive may veto the resolution to declare war, then they would be able to.
Right. Okay.
But they can't by default.
I'm trying to puzzle together all the different types of clauses that we're going to need. For
I
this.
really think the only thing you need to say is the executive may only veto laws. Not even say only, just say they may veto laws. Make sure it's obviously the legislative laws. And
I just think it's easier to say they can veto legislation, because legislation is a very specific type of.
legislation honestly sounds broader to me. Bills, if there most likely will be, they may pass a bill, it then goes to the executive. If they veto it, then if they don't veto it, it becomes a law.
Then what if?
And I guess there always has been the issue. Excuse me?
What if they call it an act, for instance? Like, can they veto an act? Can they veto a?
It's always kind of been accepted, because usually people will say act. They'll use act sometimes. An act is not different than a bill.
I think we need to be specific.
I think that is fair. So we could change bill to legislation, but that's kind of just like changing words we already use. Yeah, that's really what legislation feels to me, like anything they do. Bills feels more specific to exactly new bill. And I would say explicitly put amendments to legislation in the bill, in the Constitution. That might just be me.
Well,
because amendments should also be vetoable, by the by.
We could define everything the legislature passes as a bill. The legislature may pass bills.
We don't want that, though. We want explicitly that a bill is something that's only new legislation.
That's why we just got to define what legislation means, right? We just have to say legislation includes anything this, and this.
So you would just define a new law being made?
Let's pull up what it looks like right now. I don't remember exactly what I wrote, but I did write out something like that. Up on mine, and I'll copy and paste it. Let's see.
I would note with that.
Little thing under the
that little thing you just added, that would mean they can't give away things created in the capital state, which I mean sounds like something we might want to do. They wouldn't be able to give away non-combat units created in the capital state to the little guys. Yeah, but I mean, if you build a worker, doesn't the governor choose what the workers do in their cities? Correct? Yeah, but if the capital, I'm saying if the capital made a worker and they wanted to give it to, say, Mayor of Syracuse, they should be able to do that. Ooh, I like
And the legislature
that.
should be
in
able to as well.
there. Uh-huh. Definitely. So if they're able to defer their powers to anyone else, that means a bill could be made if it passes. If the ministry doesn't veto a bill, they vote, let's say, 3/5 in favor of a bill that technically takes more power from the executive than they should be able to. That can just be seen as them deferring power. However,
The chancellor may establish additional
Crazy
rules and
Guitars Weird
procedures
Music.
for themselves and create subordinate executive positions or cabinets subject to reasonable regulation under the rule of law.
Yep.
You see that as a delegation of power. You create little offices underneath you that take on certain duties
Totally.
that you
I doubt
had.
it will be used, but it sounds fun.
Can I just say I love the word reasonable?
Yeah, I do too. It gives you an actual job, Arch.
The whole court is going to be the most powerful thing. Also, what is the rule of law? Or should we just say under the law? Because the rule of law is a different concept, I think.
That is fair.
Usually the law is what the legislature passes, right? I see like there's the Constitution and then there's the law.
Right. So, yeah, so we could just change it to the law. The rule of... Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's things like I generally agree with you. However, for things like legislature size, the size of
Also,
the legislature, that should, you know.
this,
But
this
I
the
do.
whole reason.
the ones that I included are very particular. Point.
Well, I mean,
So
it could be broken
you're
unless
right.
it's changed by. I mean, like if it says you should not murder unless this is changed by law, and I murder someone and it hasn't been changed by law.
This is different. I would argue that this is entirely different than what you're saying, because when you have something like the giving power to the chancellor. So the work, but what I remember we were talking just before about defining what legislation means. What I had written before, and I'm not saying this is what it should be. I'm just saying what I had written was under the I posted it under Article 2. Legislative chamber, assuming we have a bicameral, but that could be easily changed, may introduce legislation pertaining to anything neither covered nor prohibited by this Constitution, including but not limited to the issuance of directives and or policy guidelines to the president, the recall of elected officials, the division of our cities into provinces, and the establishment of subordinate offices, courts, or institutions.
Where is that at?
That would be under Article 2. I kind of copy and pasted that. There's some things to that are like part of my proposal that can be taken out that we haven't agreed to, such as like the division of our cities into provinces. But I think that was like generally what legislation means is those things. And it also says including but not limited to, which means
Insurance of directives are possible. What exactly do you mean by A?
It's basically they can tell the executive to do a specific thing, but limited by what's in the Constitution already. So,
Okay.
for instance,
So that does mean we would have to like super guarantee powers, make sure they're not going to be able to
right,
do.
so say moving units, for instance, they could put a bill. They might put out a bill that says you need to move your units in a only diagonal directions, which is arguably not a reasonable bill and therefore could be challenged, right?
Mhm.
But they could still issue like a directive like choose these. Not a reserved power for the executive that we've explicitly defined in the executive branch. So that would fall on like choosing civics, choosing techs, choosing the placement of our governors, which are a mechanic in Civ 6. I mean, not that should be the legislature's job. Maybe we reserve that for something else, but that was just an example, right?
We give great people to the executive.
To the executive, we can do all
That
sorts of
would be non-combat civilian.
Right.
I think it's more to change that.
You know, that kind of stuff. It sort of works in concert with the sort of subject to reasonable regulation. The legislature does a lot of different things. They do it through legislation. There are certain powers reserved. It specifically says that they can pertains to anything neither covered nor prohibited by the Constitution. So, there's a bit of prohibition in certain areas of the Constitution that we've already established for the executive and for the judicial branch and for the states and whatnot. I don't know. That's what it said. If y'all have any sort of amendments to that, but
That sounds pretty good. Do we have a supremacy clause? And we should also, I think we should like flush out judicial review because it kind of needs to be it.
now judiciary consists of the Supreme Court. You're responsible for exercising appellate jurisdiction to resolve disputes that may arise between this Constitution, statutes of the law, and or actions taken by government officials.
So,
Coffee,
yeah.
I gotta say, watching you talk with Dom the other day definitely brought back Mark II memories. By the way, did we get an actual answer on the required signatures for the petition? I do feel like 20 would be the most fair. 26 kind of sorry. $20 is what we got on the petition to do the second runoff, for sure. Mm-hmm. It's annoying because a lot of the comments are people debating. Yeah.
We're about 12 right now, or 13.
Cinco, have you said? Cinco.
Including RB himself, the person.
Cinco sign. Hey, Arch, have you signed? You should sign for Democracy, Arch. Democracy hasn't spoken, but its voice is being stolen by the tyrannical coffee bean. I like that. You'd be very energetic. Oh, if he gets on the ballot, you have to vote for him.
Just a writer. Starbucks.
Mandated.
Right there.
Mandated.
Corporations are people. Just write
It's a
Starbucks.
resolution in Democraciv.
No, shh.
Uh,
Please no.
I'm not gonna vote. They no. They look, Vice President, man. Okay, but look, McDonald's steals the vote by feeding all of the homeless people, which will increase by like 8,000% in 8 years. Think about it. Thus thinning the population,
You just need to stay alive until they're elected.
causes food shortages, right? 'Cause all the farmers die.
What are the parties here?
Okay, but no,
McDonald's,
Walmart.
Democrat,
You know
Republican?
Walmart would be Republican, and I mean all the towns with a Walmart already vote Republican.
What is even happening here?
Don't.
We should get back
question
on
us.
topic. I have to
Okay,
go.
tangent done. Where were you at? I think that's fine. Because I mean that does leave open legislature allowing them to pick a civ or anything, because they can improve that.
I think that's already implied, though, isn't that?
Where exactly are you adding this? I am very much a fan of bringing back the legal spiderweb approach, where we totally make everyone hate their lives and get to sue people more, because it's impossible to interpret the Constitution. And I know Arch just unmuted his mic to agree with me. I don't want you to try to do it, but I think we should strive for applying. Oh no!
Don't do
You
a
need
complicated
acid,
constitution.
and you need acid for shroom. It would be copy pasted 3 times, and you wouldn't be able to.
I believe in a really short constitution with the word reasonable every other word.
Yes.
Yes. You're speaking my language. Can I get back on the call with you?
It means whatever I, the Supreme Court Justice, thinks to be. That's kind of the key word between.
Hey man, I'm becoming a super. I will join the court. Never, no.
Well, see, it's not. It's whatever the court says is reasonable. So if whatever you did,
they give us a 26% approved candidate.
if it helps me out, it was totally reasonable.
The 3% who put them as a last pick. Where do you live? Idaho? Nope, never mind. I live in Florida. It's just scary all the time.
Like people make 3% milk just to please them, or I don't know. Yeah, 3% milk. Just make them happy. Wow, that's kind of scary. Huh.
3%. That is not. Why pick 3%? It does look nice on the flag. I'll give them that.
So let's get back.
Yeah, I can tell. Started in 2008. I wonder what. Pre or post November? Only giving me 2008.
I think we have to come to some sort of draft.
Okay, single executive I don't like. And honestly, I've been looking at HOD. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I don't think
stupid.
it's single.
But I had a council, and that was just lame. They took away so little of my power, but made me feel so insignificant. Also, it was longest running. Thank you very much, Coffee. Honestly, I think I beat Ipple. I think I still beat Ipple, even though he ran all of last March in terms and executive. But that is a speculation. He was minister for life because IFP are they're dead. Never mind. Oh, yes, that as
Wait.
well. As long as I'm deemed, can we deem in the Constitution like Hyde in white text that I'm the best general? I just want that to pass and then show that to Blonde Dog.
Just I'm the ultimate
so-
decider of all questions. Just put that in white text there. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Ever. I'm
I
gonna
just
put
think that
If you have a question, just give it.
that. Oh,
Just
fuck.
if we
Not
have
West
an
is
executive
actually two people. Change
of if we're having a more limited ministry
West.
or a more limited executive,
I don't necessarily think we
Has-
are. I think we're having an executive and a legislature that's more geared to be influential in the game and do stuff with the ministry. I think the last legislature, they kind of tried and they kind of did a bit, but they really didn't bother a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And then they just complained. But that's me, and I'm biased.
I also think that it's difficult to really put my words into it right now. I just want to see things laid out, and I want to see what people think. Like specifically how like espresso. Like I'm still sort of confused on exactly how your system works. Like all the moving pieces.
Yeah, I think I understand coffees a lot more than I would. people population or city population? About to say. Masinko, sorry buddy, you made that issue in Mark 3.
Oh well. Mark 3 mistakes
Mark 3,
aside.
I mean, the citizen in general was a mistake. It didn't get much better. We'll just leave it.
Mark 3 mistakes aside, I'm confused what you're. So
It should
espresso.
be like able to be abandoned, not have a big uproar about it. I think that's, or like a big, we have to amend the Constitution, or even we have to get rid of the entire legislature.
So let me back on track. Espresso, please explain what is the structure of your executive at all the different levels of it proposal.
Yeah.
It's fine.
He just has a base.
Powers are reserved to those. Governors.
It should be a government. That's
They send
And
that
then-
to the ministry.
they send that to the executive.
What do you prefer?
I think okay. Yeah. So a lot of early game or a lot of early talks, people were saying like one person, that's it. I think one person, that's it is like dumb because like that's doesn't feel right. But governors and one person is fine, in my opinion. Yeah. That sounds like nah. I would say that's. I wouldn't put that in the Constitution for sure. I would say maybe allow the president to do that. Yeah. Uh-huh. So just to be clear, with your system, we pretty much have like just a standard, 15% of the voters get to become a legislator, or whatever percent you pick. It would just be a basic, yeah, a basic, a bit in the start before we have any cities, states, provinces, whatever. There is a 20% representation for that's how many legislators is going to be. That's okay. So then, when let's say we get a city, we make that the first state. Let's say there's 10 people there. So then there's 2 legislators from that city. But there's still 50 people. Yeah, there's still 50 people. Okay. Yeah. So, uh, do I assume legislators, governors don't have to be citizens of the state they're in. I would say that's kind of a pointless requirement.
Do too.
I mean, like, that can be, like, definitely a bad thing if you're running, like, a politically, not even from here, or why are we voting here, blah, 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 blah. But I'm aware. But if those people still vote for someone and they, like, didn't get to form in a week before or whatever, something, they're not a citizen there, I still think they should be able to be governor or legislator for that city. There's no real reason they shouldn't. Yes, fully. Like, there's no real moral opposition other than maybe the voters won't like it, but they will vote.
Like we're just
I'm really just saying it doesn't matter if the candidate is from that city or not. And they wouldn't be able to vote for themselves, sure, but
like we're
Yeah.
discussing semantics right now. We should be
Yeah,
focusing on structure.
I just want to make sure it's not an issue for future. Just because we're on it now and we can get it settled.
So let's talk about what in your model the governors, right? They're reserved powers of controlling cities. The president then would also be controlling an exploration unit, right?
They'd be controlling military units, doing diplomacy,
Doing diplomacy.
spending money, perhaps. They would be doing trade
How
routes.
do we foresee streams running? Right. We set up a
Okay.
stream. Do we
I
have
think, again, simply allow a build list or they can show up. That's all I'm going to say.
not?
Proxy. If they don't, they can appoint a proxy. What do you mean? I would say the governor can, like, cede their point to proxies, but the governor should also just be able to have a proxy. If the governor has a law in that state, maybe we could maybe finagle that in, but I'd really just say, yeah. I'm really just, like, wholly ever against ever allowing someone who got elected, their proxy, to be chosen by someone else. If the entire voting populace, this being just the city, voted for it, sure. But, like, appointing someone's proxy without their permission is no way, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
What I'm curious about
Federal oversight on state.
idea on this. What happens if the appointed official of the state fails to send in a build list, and today's the day the president will get the discretionary authority to fill the blanks.
Yeah, I mean, like, that would be, if we didn't do that, then we would be allowing. Yeah, we shouldn't have a shutdown scenario where just one governor can do that. That's
Should include it so that the legislature can set some guidelines for that.
I would say
Let's
something
say
along the lines of legislature can set guidelines. I'd say legislature can set guidelines for cities, city laws. If you're gonna have a whole city law system, that's also gonna have to be like, not city law, state law. Sorry.
then that
by the
say-
way,
that
cities
would look
shouldn't have laws. States should have laws. I wanted to clarify. Yeah. Yeah. I think the main issue, the main obstacle, comma issue, with the whole states thing, it's going to be a lot of groundwork in the Constitution. Like, there's quite a few things we have to bang out. Like, that kind of has to be in the Constitution.
I think
Well, when you think about it, you have to make sure the legislature can say regulate state law, so that you can be like, you have to make sure there's all contingencies, failure and stuff.
Jack on Arch was
People can vote, all the proxies. Yeah. So the federal legislature could say, proxies for governors must be chosen like this. Okay. That's pretty much what I wanted to make sure. Yeah.
Is that something we want? I'm curious if we want to go full federal.
Yeah. I think the the strategy with this constitution compared to Mark IV was like bare bones, do whatever the fuck you want. This is just like how you vote. This is going to be very flexible and it allows them to do things, but it's more rigid so that there is something to rely on and use, especially for the court. Honestly, can we put reasonably like 5 more times, please?
I wanna have the reasonably clause
Please.
put it on that. Well, you could just say so.
As long yeah, wait.
Instead of this, you write.
As long as they don't unreasonably
Subject to-
violate the law. The legislature may not
to a reasonable extent, just like on every other.
they must follow the law to a reasonable extent. So yeah. That sounds great.
We'll choose I want to go through and tweak some of the wording and stuff without changing.
Yeah.
But I think I have an idea of what, and you know what, I'm totally fine with the governor, the appointed executive from the different states, and that the capital one is the president.
Well, I think it's more that the president is the cap. Just
Right.
say.
Sure.
Continue.
That works for me. Just as long as the whole streaming process and all that kind of stuff is streamlined, so we don't have a bunch of people things down.
Really,
maybe
the only way to fuck up the stream, efficiency wise, is to like overburden it in the Constitution. If it's not like super strict in the Constitution, it'll be worked out. Because everyone at the stream wants an efficient stream. We don't. We've done it right.
Then
We didn't do it Mark 4. Yeah. And then I made it right away. Executive procedure. Great. Yeah. Real fast. Do we have an executive procedure system? That's very nice in Mark 4.
just have
Basically
that the executive can
Yeah,
establish
yeah. We had
procedure.
reasonable regulation, right?
No, they can establish their own procedure for themselves.
Subject to reasonable regulation.
They can do it themselves, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, they can.
Okay.
I have an idea, and I want to see what you guys think of it. So, before jumping down my throat and assuming what I mean by this, I think potentially we should have a vice president to go with the president.
I'm definitely leaning towards that more and more.
I think that the vice president should just be the speaker of the legislature.
I lean away from that.
And the reason the reason would be to have someone who is sort of a
Yeah.
right. But in here, what would be really great for a vice president would be someone who really understands what has been going on within the legislature, able to come to the streams and advise the president on what the law says and where and like why.
I feel that
right?
should be really a basic responsibility of the president. I think the vice president, honestly, it can be a pretty political thing where it's just, where maybe you like
I
you
agree it
party-
should be on the onus of the president, but I also think that that's a lot to ask of the president. I think
to
there's
understand. It's not a lot to ask the president to know what's happening. You don't have to read every debate and stuff, and you can ask your party's legislators what's happening, but
agree. I just think there needs to be someone who is even more of an expert than would be functionally the same.
if you said something along the lines of like the Speaker of the House must inform the president of stuff, I could see that more. Maybe have like a tradition start where like Speaker and President sit down and they go over what's happening in the legislature. Yeah, but also just calling them the vice president like seems weirder. I think a vice president, in my opinion, should be official proxy. And because they're official proxy, it's probably just going to be some dude who has Civ 6. And all this stuff. Like, honestly, I wouldn't be against it.
You know what? I mean, I'm perfectly fine with having it being the speaker of the legislature may join the president during streams to advise on legal.
By the way, since or if we choose Norway, we should not use all of the other Civ DLCs, all the single ones, just the big 2 expansions.
Why do you think that?
That's just me. Because that would lower the cost to entry by like $50.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not really losing that much to the game, like, to be honest.
Goes to it, but like, I mean, I'll be involved, and I own so far, and I plan on buying Rise and Fall.
Currently, I'm split between the 2 DLCs or AirPods, so
I'm perfectly happy to share my library with whoever is know if that's perfectly legal or not, but I don't really care. I mean, I don't share it currently with anybody, but I would be happy to give and take to whoever happens to be president at the time to play with it. That's possible too. I mean, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like, happy to do it. I'm sure there are other people will have all the DLC who are able to do it as well. But I mean, if I'm also perfectly like financial financial restrictions that people have.
Low, true.
Yeah.
Howdy.
First off, I think that's the main
We've had
point.
climate in the last 2 marks and no one's touched it except for the Green Party for 2 months. Invite them to try again.
Yeah.
I guess we never really got to it. It was more of a late game thing, but yeah.
So I have to head out pretty soon. So do you want to look at the judiciary, or do you want to just?
Did you get a chance to look at it, Archwizard?
So do we only want one court? We can. That's kind of the thing.
Never
The
really
if you
took
look at the
advantage of it.
legislative branch, if you look at the legislative branch, it allows them to create more courts. I don't know if you want the legislature
but
to do that. That's how it is.
And
Also, against removing appellate.
I miss judicial election.
legislature. All right, that's cool. I'll just leave some comments there. And
Do we have governors flushed out, or do we want to? Yeah, I would say we probably shouldn't skip out on the language there. We're not shying away anywhere else.
Can you at least specify that the governor needs to be defined in the state constitution or at least
I would
state
say,
laws?
I would also say like controls all production and tile management. Because if you say,
I was gonna write up some stuff after this meeting, or at least tomorrow or something, to reflect everything that we've kind of discussed. Show you guys at the next meeting potentially. But I mean, feel free to keep doing that. Keep tweaking language now. I just have a lot of like. It's hard for me to work on this draft myself. Like messy, and I'm a very particular person when it comes to my writing. That the president is the.
Yeah, are we keeping chancellor here?
Yeah, I was going to ask. Are we running for chancellor or president?
Chancellor sounds kind of. I would say president.
I love the
President's
word
simple,
chancellor, but I
nice.
love presidency.
Chancellor sounds nice, but it doesn't really fit. It's more of a legislature thing, I think.
Executive.
Alright,
Germany
how
has a
about-
chancellor.
yeah,
That's
whatever.
the
That was
executive.
Hitler.
He was the chancellor of Germany.
Yes. But that's also elected by
So
the
we
legislative
shouldn't
branch.
use
It should be noted, right?
But they have like a parliament.
As
So
long as we don't use region-specific names, I'm fine.
I'm cool with president.
AKA, don't do Jarl.
Sounds so great.
It should be noted that the Minecraft spin-off that Charlie runs, we have Jarls.
Us.
That's still a thing?
Yeah. Yeah, Charlie runs a Minecraft version of Democraciv.
Is there laws and shit?
Not yet. It's setting up, and I'm on the Discord server if you want.
How many people?
Let me check. There we go. We're talking about. Oh, crap! Now people are DMing me about the Minecraft spin-off. 279 9.4
Guys, I gotta get going.
25. We're talking about 25 total.
Send me a link. It only says Wes is the best general once. And it only has one reason. It does say, I think I should say it twice with 2 reasonables in the second one. Wes is reasonably the
at it
best
when I get the
reasonable
chance.
general.
Come.
Reasonably the best reasonable general.
See you guys later.
See it. Oh yeah, crap. Now people won't link the Minecraft spin-off. That's where Charlie went off once he got kicked out of the server. No, not he left the server, not kicked out.
Driven off by an angry mob. He was an angry mob.
Yeah, info, crap, here. Permanently copy, and, off topic. Boom. It's an off topic if you're interested.
What is the cabinet?
Yeah.
I think we're just using a president. Are we gonna have a general? Just allow. The executive has procedures, then you don't really have to have that. If they have procedures, then they can delegate their own power.
Yeah.
Then they can delegate their own power. So they don't really need to. Do we have that right now?
Until it got removed.
Yeah, I'd say
By yours truly. You could just refer it.
ooh. 8-week terms. Long. Let's see.
The thing about an 8-week term, that basically means we're going to have 3 presidents at most.
I would say 4 for sure.
Yeah. That leaves room for re-election and change of heads.
Throw it into a doc that will be voted on, but 4. Do not remove that.
Are the governors also controlling units too, made in their states? Hmm. Yeah.
What are you saying?
Are governors going to be able to control units, combat or non-combat, created in their states?
No. Are you saying should they or can they?
Can they at the moment? Hmm.
If you just give it all to the president, he can delegate his powers.
True.
In the thing that says it can delegate powers, does it say the executive may delegate powers or members of the executive? Because it should probably be members.
Governors.
Yeah, my issue with that is say there's 4 governors. The 4 governors vote to delegate the power of general or power of moving units to some dude. Is that true? Yeah, but if it's the executive that may delegate their powers, the executive. I'm just saying.
No, I was just wondering. No, I was just making. Yeah, I understand that. I just wanted to see if there was a possibility of a civil war or something like that, where a state secedes because they lost the election or something stupid like that. Tech.
Well, the president would probably.
Mm. Or you
Yeah.
can save file.
I'm thinking you build shitty improvements on other bases. Or you? Oh, you can.
Build only world wonders you know you can't produce in the next 100 turns.
Just add them to your queue. Is there a queue in this game? Tell me there's a queue, because I know there's not one in the base game.
I believe there might be a queue.
If there's not a queue,
Don't.
we're adding that in a mod.
Okay.
Oh, I do that maybe early game, but in Civ 5 at least, late game, new city, queue for the next 800 turns.
I mean, Also, are we putting in the legislative approval for text into the Constitution instead of being its own separate law?
They have their power to do text.
Mm. Yeah, the
We're kind of
legislature.
like basing a few systems off. Yeah.
I mean, that kind of happened in Mark IV because the legislature didn't know what the fuck they were doing, but
legislature didn't do anything.
exactly.
They
Because we
refused to.
do
It was
know.
ridiculous. They were like, they got pissy when like we didn't let them build a boat. But
Yes.
like, do something actually productive, legislature. Declare war on Persia.
I mean, we got one declaration of war, but then everyone
Our
got
army was so fucking pathetic, especially late game. We were
Yeah.
being ravaged by barbarians the entire game, and you know, this is irrelevant. I'm sorry. I think
Yeah, I was just wondering because I think this, depending on how much like science or culture we're producing, that might seriously slow down how long sessions are going because I could easily see.
That is part of the idea.
True.
This will give more things to the legislature, and if they
Sure.
slack, there will be, consequences.
True. But I mean, it's gonna suck early game because
Early game, it should be fine.
Okay.
I'm hoping the legislature passes some sort of, in their tech bill. I'm hoping they do something along those lines. So we can also set a turn limit for the next game session, and if there's like eurekas that happen, then the executive can change the order a bit. Something along those lines. But that's for legislation.
Yeah. And we're not dealing with the legislature today, right?
Which will be
Thursday, I'm not open until after 5 or 6, so. I mean, I don't know. EST.
I'm also EST. I should be open after like 5 or 6.
Yeah. Honestly. When are we looking for ratification then? And what's the decision on the Civ vote? Just wondering, sir. Hmm. And that shouldn't be too hard, right? Question mark. Wasn't it just straight up just mods? Make sure to update the Constitution every time it gets amended or something like that.
Yeah.
Also, that was when Little Pig actually was active on the server. So no. Yeah. Also, we should probably update the amendment part because it takes you to the link of amendments in for Mark IV. Okay.
What'd you say? Yeah, I don't really see why we do that.
I mean, it's more historical question mark because we still have the original text for the U.S. Constitution. But then again, it's easier to read it without like saying, "Hey, here's the 26 amendments we made." Wait, how many amendments were in Mark II Constitution and Mark III Constitution? Just out of curiosity. It should, you know that Mark IV only has 4 amendments. Oh. Hmm. Oh. But was it too late or no? Like to save the community in Mark III? Oh. Oh. Alright. Yeah. Hey. Also, Archmason, just suggestions and the judicial branch thing. Yeah. Yeah, that might work.
Yeah. I'm sure Miss Cinco's good there too. And honestly, put it on like a Reddit post maybe. Also, if anyone is just. Do you plan any more polls?
Yeah.
You know what question you should put on there?
Second referendum.
Do you approve of a second referendum or second round in the referendum?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
Appointment of
Oh,
judicial, I feel, is pretty basic. Just executive
yeah.
point. Executive point, ledge confirm. I mean, say that, and then I can just. Ministry versus president.
Well, do we technically have both?
Throw it on. I mean, honestly, I think if we finished cleaning this draft up and presented it, there wouldn't be a lot against it, because it's done pretty well with like combating the major issues with anything. And a lot more beef.
Yeah.
I think an issue early convention, we were all talking theory a lot, but when you really start putting it to paper in this sort of semi-committee system we're doing here,
Mhm.
it really comes together a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of glad we didn't go like constitution by poll. Like, it's good to get polls and opinions on things, and like for specific questions like how should the judiciary be elected.
Yeah.
But just going like, okay, guys, do we want a ministry or a president? Now we're pigeonholed into that. Yeah. It's gonna be bad.
Also, how in depth are we going to go into impeachment? Because that was a huge controversy for a good middle part of Mark IV.
So one issue I've seen with a couple impeachment things, especially for Mark IV, it's kind of like the legislature has the power to impeach. They do it, and then it just kind of says the chief justice resides. It needs
Unless
to be
if the ministry is involved.
It needs to be more specific than that, because
Yeah.
a lot of people think, oh, you're impeached, so now you're out. Not you're impeached, now you go to trial.
Yeah.
Yeah. In HOD, it's impeachment. Like, you literally get voted and you get voted out. you don't go to trial or anything. I think. Yeah. Yeah.
My God. So yeah.
So you.
Yeah, that would be nice because it was straight up a court case on how the legislature handled the first and only impeachment. And it was
What was
after
the-
like it was Ravis, the
Oh
GCP.
yeah. Well, I think that was just wrong.
Yeah. Clarified. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you might have just been missing it. It is slightly hard to navigate at this point. Might want to bang out slight format. Yeah. Restructure. I want to make sure we have as many like subsections, so it can be like Article 3, Section 4, subsection 3, C1I states.
My God. So you basically want to be BIS.
I want to say that a lot. It has nothing
Oh.
to do with being BIS. I just want to say
Okay.
that.
Understandable.
Because I remember in my brief, I wrote a case against the MAD in Mark II, and I was basically just like, they can't do this because of this, but it was like a couple different things. So like a third of my big ass paragraph was just Section 4, or Article 4, Section 3, subsection 2, C1I B789.
I mean, that is fun to say, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds pretty professional.
Lots of parentheses though.
My
Yes.
God.
West is the best. A, reasonable. B, reasonable general. No, he's the best. He's the best. A, reasonable. AI, general. AI2 or AII. Dude. And then AIIA. Reasonably again.
Yes. Also, when the executive may veto legislation, does that mean only the president or all the governors plus the president? Or plus any cabinet members that
Yeah. I think a lot of that wording was built for like, is it going to be a president or a ministry? So it's probably going to be president.
Yeah. We should probably define this once we get more data on stuff. On like what actual executive system we're using. Comment needs to. I think we're done. It's just that we need to clarify some stuff, that's all. Mainly veto. And that's uh, that is true, but still. No, they just ban Asian boy pictures and that's it. To discuss the other, the new justices coming in. Just ask Joe and his experience when entering the court for the first time. It should be no. Yeah, you were there when Das almost got impeached, right?
I like how they were trying
Yeah, I know.
after burning the city. They were like, hold on a second.
Oh yeah, burning the city. Oh yeah, that was fun. They even in the official Democraciv like video said the slaughter of Timbuktu or the massacre at Timbuktu.
No, so after I burned the city, I remember one of the posts after calling me Nazi. They were like, "Let's impeach him," showing
Of course,
that
that
they
failed.
didn't even know I wasn't in fucking government. I was a proxy.
My God.
Of course, I was about to get voted on to become the actual minister.
Yeah.
That didn't go through.
Yeah.
Proxy is the best thing.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean,
and,
at the end of
it should and totally fine too.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the assumption I always have made, the person who is proxying you represents your views to some pretty decent, reasonable extent.
You wouldn't trust someone to run the same position.
They don't need proxies because they like. It's not like they have to show up to a session to vote.
Yeah.
You can appoint a moderator.
Elect an elected moderator and an actual appointed moderators. Or are we discussing this?
Elected mods, RB.
Oh Jesus
Woke.
Christ! I know. It's
Yeah, no, it's totally the culture. The games he came from, the culture was shitty mods, to be straight. He was one of them. But here we trust our mods. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I do see. Oh Jesus Christ! Thank God we don't have head moderators
You know,
anymore.
I think for like a couple months leading up to me joining Mark II, I had been thinking while playing Mark II or Civ 5 every single day. I had been thinking, God, it would be so cool if we got like a bunch of people and we all like made an actual government, made all these politics. And I'm on the Civ subreddit one day, and it's like democratically, and then I joined it that fast.
I legit joined because I saw, the endless war from Civ 2, right? That scenario. So I watched a video on that and learned of a subreddit dedicated to that. So what happened is that I went to the subreddit, but the subreddit's dead. But I was able to scroll down just a bit and see an ad for Mark II asking people to elect us as president.
What are you talking about?
How I joined.
No. What sent you? What was the endless war thingy?
Oh, Endless War Civ 2.
No.
Oh yeah, that's the video that sent me to the
I've seen this
subreddit.
video before. I just have always thought it was some shitty video.
Oh.
Same here, Retro.
Are we done here, boys?
Yeah, we're done.
Okay,
Okay.
boys. Goodbye, boys.
Goodbye.
Boys. I say boys as if.
Alright.
Okay.
Sure.
This was kind of late, but I kind of liked it. So
Yeah.
we need to stop catering to these damn Europeans, man. Who cares about them? Goodbye. Fuck yeah, quote me, fuck Europeans. What are you talking about? Goodbye. I'm not Norwegian. I'm Icelandic. I'm starting an Icelandic separatist party.
My god. The state of Iceland.
I could, and I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I'm gonna become a court justice, and I'm gonna rule in my own favor that I can have every single city, and it will become Iceland.
You know, Iceland's a part of Europe, technically, right?
The most technical part of Europe possible.
It's so technical that we consider Greenland part of America, even though it's like super close to Iceland. Not
Yeah,
super
do you want me to go to
close,
Greenland? I can say Greenland if you'd like.
but... Alright.
Goodbye, comrades.
Goodbye.
Reasonable.